Hey, welcome to the Gig Life Podcast. I'm your host, Stevie Taylor. I hope you're doing well. My guest today is Gerry Pantazis. He's a drummer from Melbourne, played with Tommy Emmanuel, Bachelor Girl, Darryl Braithwaite, Richard Marx, just to name a few. He's also currently on a 20-plus year run as the drummer in the house band for the Melbourne Carols by Candlelight, which is pretty awesome, pretty impressive. Just a sound warning on this one. Part of my recording equipment failed while we were recording this, so luckily I run a backup. But the backup, the sound quality is not quite as good. So if you can kind of see past the quality and just focus on the conversation, I reckon hopefully you'll have as much fun listening to Gerry as I did. Anyway, let's rip in. This is episode 143, Gerry Pantazis. Here we go. Hang on, testing. It's working now. I think we're rolling. Great, yeah. Hey, Gerry, how are you, man?
I'm good, Stevie. How are you?
Yeah, good, bud. Now, can I ask you how to pronounce your last name properly? Because I've been practicing all day, but I'm not quite sure. But I'll give. Can I give it a crack? I'll give it a crack first.
Give it a shot first. Yeah, go for it.
Pantazis. Is that
perfect? It's so spot on, man. It's ridiculous. Pantazis, beautiful.
Pantazis. Okay, so is that Italian?
It's Greek.
It's Greek. Okay, so how far back the family tree is Greece?
Well,
Mum and Dad.
Mum's from Greece, and my father is actually from born in Egypt, but from Greek Egyptian background, and they met here. So I'm pretty much first generation Aussie, you know. So but with my Greek heritage and all that sort of stuff, and Pantazis, yeah, that's the Greek pronunciation, the Australian pronunciation. It's actually in Greek you would say Pantazis, So
so the accent changes, the emphasis
totally.
On the emphasis, the emphasis on the different syllable, right?
Syllable, correct. You just stole my gag, man.
But
that's right.
Two drummers walk into a bar. Oh,
exactly.
No, mate, man, it's really good to be chatting to you, and like I said to you in a message, I'll back it up a little bit. So we've all got these drummers and albums that during a certain part of our lives, we studied and we loved, and it came out at a certain time where it was kind of needed. And for me, Bachelor Girl album in 1998, when that came out, and I'm not talking about there was, Buses and Trains, which was the massive hit, but when I bought the album and started listening to the songs, I heard this drummer on this album and I went, man, who's this guy? Some session dude from the States, and he's playing kind of the stuff that I'm into and I'm playing, and it's kind of, I was listening to the songs, and when it changed, the song would come for the first time and I would go and do a fill. I'm like, Jesus, he just did the same fill I would have played. It was like that. Yeah. So that was one of those albums for me, Gerry, and I listened to it hundreds of times in my drum room, and I learnt all your parts, and I really did, and I don't know if you've heard that before, but yeah, it was one of those albums, and especially in that time too, because a lot was sort of going on, and musically for me, and then I also got really, really sick during that time, and that album, all of that album sort of helped me along. So it's great to be sitting here and obviously since that point I found out who you were, and I've sort of been following along all this time, and it's great that I'm actually sitting here chatting to you, man. I'm a fan.
Thanks, man. That album's going back, close to 21, 22 years, I think, or even more than that.
Waiting for the Day. Bachelor Girl, Waiting for the Day is the name of the album. Yep. And so, correct, most people would know the hit song.
Oh, the big hit, that one. And then, maybe Treat Me Good was out there for a while. I didn't play on, I think there was some program drums on Permission. Oh, no, did I play on Permission to Shine? No, I didn't play it because Permission to Shine and Lucky Me were new extra cuts on the album that got added on a second release. So I've got two versions of that CD. Of one with just the normal sort of listing of songs, and then there was another special edition with two extra songs on there, which
they remixed that song "Afraid." You Are Afraid. And
that's right.
Yeah, so the streaming version of that is, I think it's programmed drums, but that was one of the songs in that original release with the drums. Nice slow ballad and builds, and it's the wonderful drum track on that. So when I got the streaming version, I'm like, what have they done? What have they done to this song?
Maybe they did. Maybe they kind of rejigged it because of that whole streaming thing of it's. I don't know. Maybe it's a royalty thing, or I'm not really sure, or whether it goes back to the record company. But it's funny going back to what you said about you learn the stuff and go, oh, that's a field that I would have played, or that's being familiar with that. It's quite possible that we both listen to the same
stuff,
players, and the same players coming up. So I mean, I was a big, still am a big Jeff Porcaro fan, and Steve Gadd, and those session players that we could turn on the radio and just listen to them. They were there. So you're kind of absorbing their musicality without even knowing about it. So it's a no-brainer for me to hear you say that and go, that's something that I would play. I go, well, yeah, because that sounds about right. I think every drummer would probably play what I played on that thing.
Maybe.
Yeah, so or something close to that, So I mean, because fills and drum fills and things like that. I mean, it's really a personal thing. It's how you play it and where you play it in a song, helps propel it into the next section. I mean, that's what fills do. So whatever fills I did on that record, I can't remember how much of them were planned out. But I do remember that we'd already gigged that stuff well in advance before going into the studio.
Right,
to track
that's what I was going to ask. What was the process? Had you met the guys and you went in and it was a session, or you were playing in that band at the time?
I was already playing with Tanya in another band. Actually, I was already playing with her in a cover band. We were working sort of 2 nights a week, like a residency gig, and all the while we were doing that, and this residency gig lasted for a good 6 months or something like that. So while we were doing that gig, obviously her and James were working on writing stuff. So when it came to kind of do a showcase gig, she asked me if I wanted to be part of it, and I said, yeah, sure. So they handed the demos over, and we rehearsed, and pretty much what went down on that showcase gig is what ended up on the album. But believe it or not, Buses and Trains was a song that kind of got jigged from memory. Got jigged a lot because it was actually in the minor key and the groove was totally different.
Really?
The groove was, I remember the groove being more like a dun, dun, da, 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 dun, dun, that sort of thing. Hey, ma, dun, that was like really dark sort of vibe,
Gotcha.
So when it came to record the tune, they kind of changed it and became the version that it is there. I mean, the guys might not remember any of that, but I kind of do.
Yep.
And it's kind of like my recollection of that. And then all the other tracks off the album, you know, I mean, that album was done in a day and a half. We tracked that, the drums.
Really?
Yeah, it was done pretty quick, only because I knew the songs and I knew my parts, and you know, it was really, really well planned out as far as that. Once we got in the studio, we weren't mucking around, you know, and obviously in those days, you know, you're up against the clock. So time is of the essence and not wasting money in the studio. So, yeah, I mean, it was done quickly, but it was done really, really well from memory. And then obviously when the stuff was released, I think the first time I heard it was on the radio. That's when I first heard it.
Did you have any sort of inkling that it was sort of good enough to be commercial?
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah. Okay, absolutely. The songs were great. I mean, they still are.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
they are.
And I just remember kind of thinking that I'm not sure what's their single going to be to get them on the map, but they chose Buses and Trains, and then I guess the rest is history. And you can walk in any supermarket around Australia and it'll be playing in the background. You know what I mean? So
man,
it's still going. You know,
it still gets played on Smooth FM every single morning at work.
Really? Okay.
every day.
Man. I'm sorry about that.
No. It's good. Yeah. I dig it, man. Yeah. But
and the loop's really cool. Like back in the day, that loop that is at the front half of that song, you know, is really cool. It still holds up today. You know what I mean? So it wasn't something like it was a fad or something like that. And whenever we would play that live, it wasn't to a sequence. I was actually triggering the sections of that loop live.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it was totally organic. Yeah, totally organic. So, and obviously the loop comes in back into the, you know, after the big bridge and stuff like that. And then it does another breakdown. Then the loop appears. Well, I got to make sure I'm still in the same sort of tempo range. So when I'm playing the loop, we're in the ballpark, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was really cool. It was a great way of doing it. I mean, of course, a few headaches triggering wise, but it was once I got my head around it. I mean, you know, we are talking about the late 90s with all that stuff. Yeah. So that technology was still, you know, primitive.
So what was the technology then? What were you using? Like
I had an SPD-20 as my MIDI trigger, which was triggering the loop like off James Roche's one of his keyboard sort of modules or something like that.
Yeah,
you know?
Wow.
So you would play like eighth notes, or da 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 da, and what would come out would be a chicka 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 check. So if I went chicka 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 chicka, it would follow me. It was really weird. So sound checks were really funny. You know what I mean? So I was kind of goof around with that. Yeah. But we had to make sure like all the trigger sensitivity and all that sort of stuff that goes along with that. With anything that you're triggering, even to this day, it's still you got the worries of cross triggering. You know, you hit one thing, but then the sound comes off somewhere else, and so, you know. But that's what we did. I had an SPD-20, and that was for that tune, and then for some other tunes, you know, I was starting, stopping click tracks with that, and you know. But I left. James Roche was, you know, like he had his head around all that gear because of his experience playing with, like, you know. Prior to that was a lot with Tommy Emmanuel, and I believe he was in LRB there for a while too. But
oh really?
But so he had
really?
yeah towards the later stages there, and so he had his head around that technology, and he was pretty on with it. So I would just hand him the SPD-20 and go, well, this is what you need. Do the programming or whatever you want to do on it, and then hand it back, and I'll play it. You know what I mean? So. And it was all MIDI technology, so, but heaps fun. It was really heaps fun when it worked, and when it didn't work, it was a total nightmare. You know,
right?
But
did
you know,
did you get to tour overseas with those guys?
we did. Did a couple. They did a few gigs in Asia, which we did, and then mostly local stuff here. But then I kind of left. Well, I didn't leave. I was I got replaced basically in the band because I was actually really busy doing theatre work here in Melbourne. So
You couldn't commit.
well, yeah, it's pretty hard when you're waiting for them to kind of tell you what's going on. All of a sudden, I've been handed a gig that's going to last for 13 months. So it's and I just bought a home, and you know what I mean. All that sort of stuff was sort of starting to happen, and so it kind of worked out. And then once they released a second album, they had a pretty much different band to the one that I was in, and they, from what I can understand, they were doing gigs and things like that. But the second album didn't do that great. I don't think. Some great songs off it, but it just didn't click, unfortunately. So, but you know what the great thing is that they're back out there now doing gigs and playing, and I think that's really it's fabulous because everybody gets to hear those songs again live, and so a good friend of mine, Hayden Meggett, had been doing a gig.
Yeah, and I was chatting online with Hayden for a little bit, and we were going to try and tee it up. I think it might have been COVID-ish sort of time or in between or something like that. And we were going to try and organise to meet up somewhere. And of course he was playing with Bachelor Girl, and we sort of chatted a little bit about you. And he was saying, because I was telling him, how much I sort of love those drum parts, and he was saying too, he does his best to do them justice,
Oh, he did a great job. Like we were on the same bill at the time. I was playing, doing Richard Marx's gig when he was touring around Australia, and on the same bill was Bachelor Girl. So I was looking forward to hearing them play, And so I remember sound checking, doing a sound check, and I get a tap on the shoulder, and it's Hayden, And, one of the first things he said, he goes, "Man, I've been having a ball learning your parts, And I said, "Oh, well, I'll give you my report after I hear the gig, man," jokingly, And he was great, but he was great. And he did really, really well, man. I mean, it is open for interpretation though. A lot of it is, but, and so I think as long as you're in the ballpark with the kick and snare parts, the fills are kind of, it's going to be okay. You know what I mean? It's really the grooves, the kick and snare parts and things like where you go to the ride cymbal and all that sort of where the tunes should lift, where you should bring it down. I did ask him. I said, "Hey man, have you got your splash cymbal?" And he looked at me, he goes, "What, why?" I said, "Well, there's a splash cymbal in the middle of buses and trains, He goes, "Really?" I go, "Yeah, man." I said, "You'd be surprised how nobody picks that up, or nobody is willing to play or set up a little splash." And, so it's in there. If you listen to the breakdown, it's the bar before coming in to the last chorus. There's a little, yeah. And honestly, I didn't think that was going to make the cut. I just played it knowing that maybe James might just mute the drums in that section,
Yeah, right.
But to my surprise, and actually, and being grateful about it, it's in there,
Yeah, that's cool.
Nice little tasty bit, which I'm really glad that it's in there. So it's kind of cool.
That's fantastic, man. All right, so what have you been doing lately? And then what we'll do is we'll roll back right to how it all sort of began, and we'll work up through some stuff. But we're into the new year now. So how was? Well, congratulations on 20 years of the carols, because that's something that you've done. Yep, and that's something I want to ask you a little bit about later too. So that's 20 years on the trot, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Really is.
Isn't it? Yeah. It's so this year was last year was 21. So we've gone over the.
Yep.
No, that's good, man. That's great. I mean, there's not many live gigs on TV anymore. It's or live bands. I mean, the only one that I know of is the guys on The Voice doing that, and hopefully that that Australian Idol are back, that there may be a house band, which would be good.
No, there is. I can tell you now.
Oh, great. Awesome.
There definitely is, and I'm going to be
awesome. Yeah.
Talking to Dan, the guitar player, in a couple of days, actually. So.
Great.
Yep.
Look, I've just of late, I've been touring and playing with Darryl Braithwaite for the last couple of years, and so there's more of that coming up this year. And that's pretty much as far as that. And then just doing local gigs around town here with Jeff Atchison, great blues guitar player that I've been with for close to 20 years again. So and so I got that going on, and plus I got some sessiony work here from home and doing drum tracks and what have you, and that's usually kind of ticks over now and then. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I've got enough on my plate at the minute to keep me busy, and plus some teaching as well. So I do a little bit of that, and yeah, we just plodding along with Darryl at the minute. So which is cool.
That's great. And so on Darryl, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, is another one of those albums like Waiting for the Day was another one of those albums for me. Mid-90s was Darryl Braithwaite's Rise.
Yeah.
When I and obviously not horses, new horses, but for some I don't know how I ended up getting the album, but I did. And it was another one of those albums where I was just connected to the drums, and then learn later on it's John Watson, right?
Correct. So, that's right. Absolutely.
That's another. When I first came to Australia, that was one of the CDs I had that I would practice to, and that was the album. That was the album I was practicing to, and I was playing like Watto. And then I learned later on that he'd also done or still doing the James Rain stuff.
That's right.
All great songs that I didn't know it was him, but I was also playing along to, So and to hear that you're now doing the Darryl Braithwaite thing, it's just this sort of
it's weird, isn't it?
Weird circle of just fucking great drummers, man. It's great.
Well, man, it's really interesting. Like, I knew that Watto had played and all that stuff, and plus the James Rain and and countless of other albums that he's played on. So when I kind of had to dive in with Darryl's tunes, it was a case of So we're probably the same age too, Steve. I'm 53, so are we in the same?
Nah, you're
same
way.
I'm way older.
Way. No, I'm 48.
You muggle. We're in the same. Not too far behind me, but
not too far.
Mentioning those,
those, Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we were listening to the same stuff on the radio. Let's put it that way. So, and I think we've that Rise album, that was kind of like my introduction to solo Darryl Braithwaite. I was never really a Sherbet, listener or anything like that. So my sort of Darryl Braithwaite knowledge was those records, those solo records. So it was good to revisit the original versions, because I get handed a desk tape, and things have changed. The band's playing it a little bit differently, as it does. It morphs into whatever it is. So I kind of went back and listened to the original versions and transcribed a lot of John's fills and grooves. Not to say that the beautiful John Cagnola wasn't doing that. He was definitely doing that stuff. So I just wanted to kind of make sure, what I was listening to was exactly that. And he was doing that. And I kind of got more into listening to the tones, like his snare drums and stuff like that on those recordings. For something like Rise, the tune Rise, it's a fairly ringy type, really
It's
sort of
snare,
cutting
up.
snare. Yeah, cranked up. So whenever we play it live, my moon gel comes off the snare. So, and I give it a little extra tweak before we launch into it, and then when the song finishes, put the moon gel back on, and detune it just a fraction again, So
and do you play? Can I ask you that, like in Rise, after that breakdown when it goes and then it comes back, it does a little intro.
Yes.
You do that, Phil? You do that?
I do that, Phil. Yeah,
yeah. You have to.
So that's really great. You bring that up, man. Because actually, the Phil starts on beat 2, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah, 1. Yeah. So it's like 1, 2, which, because I just love that Phil. I do it all the time, and it threw the guys in the band when I did it because, obviously Corny had morphed it into something else, and he's got every right to do that because he'd been playing with Darryl for close to 30 years. So, but I kind of wanted to play that Phil the way Watto did it, and I got to play it in front of him because we were on a double bill with James Rain, and we were on before him, and I could see Watto in the quarter. I'm thinking, oh, what's he thinking, man? I'm playing his parts, I hope it's okay. And as for those who know John Watson, he's just a sweetheart of a guy and very, very supportive and very encouraging, So it was great. I mean, I went up to him afterwards and said hello and things like that, and he gave me the seal of approval. I said, I hope I didn't kill your parts, man. He goes, no, it was fine, and not that I was sort of looking for, that sort of satisfaction of him saying it. It was more like a mark of respect from me to him, because you can't help not respect someone that's done so much for this for Australian drumming, So.
I know exactly what you mean, because if I was playing in a Bachelor Girl cover band and Gerry was standing side of stage, I'd be fucking shitting bricks that I'm playing the parts right. I wouldn't give a shit about the rest of my. And then I would have come up to you at the end and gone, "How was that? Did I get the? How was exactly? Did I get the splash? Did I get the splash in the right?"
I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. So we know the same. We have the same sort of feeling, like when we know a song so well, and then we play it, and then if that person just so happens to be there, I hope it's okay. I hope what I play is okay. It's in the ballpark, and I think generally, I'd be chuffed. I am. When someone plays that, I go, well, that's something that I played on. Yes, absolutely. There's not many of us that you can kind of say that on commercial radio these days. There's not much sort of drumming stuff going on. A lot of it's all programmed, and it's real. So I'm very proud and honoured with that, and I just hope there's more of it. I just hope there's more of it that hopefully these, some of these radio stations can give more local bands a chance to play and airplay, rather than just relying on trying to stream their stuff and getting an audience that way, which is becoming increasingly impossible. It's just becoming downright impossible,
So do you find that the stuff that you're recording for different artists that it's making its way onto some sort of radio?
Commercial radio?
Yeah.
No, not really. No, it's more. No, not really. No, I mean, some of the stuff I've done. Actually, I'm just trying to think of anything I've done recently. No, it hasn't. It's all, everyone's like trying to find their market on those streaming platforms, and obviously they might, press, 500 CDs or something like that, and then trying to sell them, or vinyl, and then trying to sell them at their gigs. It's become point of sale now with that stuff, the hard copies, because although there's record shops popping up now, I mean, but they're all dealing in nostalgic vinyl, you know, predominantly anyway. Yeah, there's some new stuff that people are releasing as vinyl, but, you know, I just don't know how much of it they're selling in record shops versus selling it at the gig, you know.
I buy a lot of, you know, I like to support, you know, local musicians and stuff, and then when they have vinyl for sale, and I'm able, I'll buy it, right?
Yeah.
But the fucking, I'm you know, I'm the ultimate fan for these people because I don't have a fucking record player.
That's incredible, man.
No, but I know that, you know, a lot of the vinyl stuff that they're releasing is sort of limited run stuff.
That's right.
And it costs a fair bit of money, and they need to get their money back.
Yeah.
So if I can buy it and support it, and you know what? See just over there. See that spot?
Yep.
There's nothing there. So for the last 6 months or so, it looks like I'm.
That's right.
You could put a record player there, eh? What do you reckon?
That's right. Yeah. I think you should, man. A couple of beautiful speakers as well. Nice little power amp, that'd be fine.
And then I can listen to the stack of vinyl that I've bought. But no, I usually buy it through Bandcamp, and then you know I'll get the digital copy as well. So that goes into my Bandcamp app, and I can listen to that in the car and that kind of stuff. But
most of the stuff I record here, they're all you know, independent artists that want to release an album or an EP or, you know, or a cluster of songs, you know. I mean, that to me, it's like a business card now. You know, it draws people to what you're doing. You know, so you know, I've been doing heaps of that stuff, and they're all, you know, these artists. Some of the stuff I've been recording, the songs are great, man. Like really, really good songs. You know, and I'm thinking, why is it so hard for these up and comers to get airplay on radio stations and stuff like that, or let's say the mainstream, you know? But I don't know what the mainstream is anymore. You know, is it you know, is it like your Triple M's? Is it your ABC? You know, your Triple J's? Like I'm so old now that I don't know what it is anymore. You know.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely still Triple J, and then sort of. You know, the stuff outside that, I wouldn't know either, Gerry, but my kids listen to stuff. And, you know, we've got like a family Apple Music and Spotify account. So, you know, we're sharing music with each other. So I get to see what they're listening to, and then I'll go and have a listen, you know. Yeah. And if they weren't listening to that stuff, I wouldn't know where it was. I don't listen to, the only commercial radio I listen to is Smooth FM. Which, you know, plays just the old stuff all the time, which is, you know, it's what we like to listen to at work, you know. I don't listen to... Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say, Stevie, when you listen to your kids' playlist, what are they listening to?
Well, my oldest daughter, she's into the, you know, Billie Eilish, Taylor Swift, that kind of stuff. And, great. You know, I've got nothing against that music. I think the music's it's fantastic. It's the songs are great. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of shit. Some of it's a lot of crap. My youngest daughter, she listens to Imagine Dragons.
Yes, I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah. She's listening to, what else was she listening to the other day? She'll just see, the thing with Spotify is, you know, you type a song and you listen to it, and then you've got some suggested stuff. So she'll start listening to that suggested playlist. So she doesn't necessarily find an art. Whereas, you know, my older daughter, she'll find an artist and she'll go back through and she'll listen to all that stuff, which is, you know, that's probably sort of how we used to do it. We dropped out for a second.
We froze a little bit.
We'll fix that in post.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. You know, my oldest daughter, she'll go back and listen to, you know, for example, Taylor Swift or Billie Eilish. She'll listen to all that stuff chronologically too, you know, and see how she's built as an artist to where she is now, and and same with the Billie Eilish stuff. Whereas, like I said, my younger daughter, I'll say to her, what do you listen to? And she'll go, oh, this song. Oh, who's that by? And then she'll have a look. Oh, such and such.
Yeah.
Oh, what are you listening to next? Oh, just whatever comes up. It's like random stuff, and she loves it. She's dancing around the place.
That's fabulous. Yeah, my son got like, he's it's pretty much the same. I give him artists to listen to. I go, look up this guy, look up this band, look at but then he'll listen to like all their old stuff as well. Like he'll listen to it religiously, and then sometimes we might be in the car. And let's say I'm listening to a Phil Collins record, and there's a deep cut that comes on. He's singing along to it.
Yeah.
I go, how do you know like the third track of Face Value?
Face Value.
Like how do you know? How do you know? And he's singing along to it. I go, because Dad, I listened to it on Spotify. I said, what, the whole album? He goes, yeah. I said, so it's kind of like a double-edged sword for most parents, I guess, but most up-and-coming musicians that want to get into music is that, it's all there for them to listen to, but I guess it's a case of how they're listening to it and, whether they're absorbing this is the artist, this is the person, this is the album that it's off, and listening to the whole album in its entirety, the way in which the artist met you to listen to it.
Yeah.
Side A, side B, or a CD with all these singles in order the way, so that way you get a nice flow. Like you get like an emotional attachment to the album.
Yep.
I mean, I mentioned Face Value. I mean, I go back to that album now and then and just listen to it from woe to go, and it's incredible. Yeah, it's such a great record, With
the Phil Collins stuff, but seriously, that's the album for me. That was my was how killer. I sort of came into the whole,
okay. So that was your introduction to
that's
Phil.
That's right. So it was Phil Collins first, and then it was early Phil Collins, and then back to Genesis.
Yeah,
and then around that time, because Genesis sort of came back with a new sort of with that song I Can't Dance,
That's right.
Dance.
Yep.
That kind of So then I went back and listened to the older sort of proggy Genesis and kind of got into that, So
did you get into when Peter Gabriel was in the band, like when he first started, when he those first couple of albums? Because
I wouldn't say I got into it. I listened to it.
And that's all you need to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Phil's drumming on those records. I mean, on everything. Phil's one of those drummers that constantly gets left out as as not being referred to as a great drummer. He's still with us, so he's still a great drummer. My introduction was obviously In the Air Tonight when I first heard that, and but I then I didn't buy that record, but then I think it was when obviously No Jacket Required. Then I went back and bought his second record, which was Hello, I Must Be Going. Which had some great songs. I had the cover version of You Can't Hurry Love and stuff like that. But I mean, obviously the first album, Face Value. But yeah, But Serious, that's a great record too, man. I mean, his drum sounds on that record are more that gated, big, roomy sound, Whereas on Face Value, if you go back and listen to that, the only track that has the big gated drum sound is In the Air Tonight. The rest of it's all dry and kind of roomy, but and totally different. That's why I love that first record, because of that. It's got that one track where that Phil's coming. It's going to come. Crank it up.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the album's like totally sort of dry and man, some of these grooves on those on some of those songs are just fantastic. I encourage anyone to really kind of have a listen to that record.
Yep. Well, I encourage anyone to deep dive Phil Collins, not just as a singer, but deep dive his drumming, because he's played on Phil Bailey's stuff. The Chinese Wall
album.
Yeah, Chinese Wall. That's right. Because around that time they that's when they him, Phil Collins, Nathan East, and Phil Bailey wrote Easy Lover.
Right, Easy Lover. That's correct.
So it was around that time. So and then I in my head it's like, okay, they have this conversation, right? Hey, Phil Bailey, can you come and sort of sing on this song? And it's like, oh, yeah, only if you come and play drums on my Chinese wall song. You know what I mean?
That's right. Yeah, I reckon that's probably how it probably more than likely went down. You know.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the stuff at that time was like that too. I mean, you listen to like on But Seriously, oh man, what's his name? He passed away recently. David
Crosby.
David Crosby. So if he featured on that But Seriously album, but then David Crosby's album, which was around that same sort of time, Phil's playing drums on it and he's singing backup vocals on it.
That's right. Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. It's like they're doing favors for each other. You know.
That's right.
Which is amazing. Which is great for us, the listener.
Oh yeah.
You know, because we get to hear these collaborations, which may not have happened at all. You know, so I mean, what a great period of music though. Like that whole '80s, the mid '80s, late '80s. Phil was king, man. He could do no wrong, and I think a lot of people hated that. I kind of loved it, man. I couldn't get enough of the guy. It was just great, And with the Genesis, the Invisible Touch album, that catapulted them into another, But they were always huge, though. That was the thing. Not many people realise that Genesis was always already a well-established act in the States, even before Phil was the solo guy, So, but it helped. It helped their cause a little bit as well. So, But I love all that stuff, man.
Yeah, that's great. And there was a lot of sort of also sharing of the musicians too. I mean, like I mentioned Nathan East before. Nathan East, so played on it. Well, played on and co-wrote Easy Lover, but then Nathan East ends up joining Phil's band when Lee Sklar left for a little while to go and do something else.
That's right.
And then
was that band? Was that when Ricky Lawson joined?
Yeah, Ricky Lawson. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
I saw that tour. Yeah,
that was I think the
both sides.
The CD was Live in Paris or something like that. So when they're walking and dancing around the round, it was in the round.
Oh, okay. So I remember seeing the tour before that, which came to Melbourne, and it was sort of like almost like a double-story type house, sort of setting, But Ricky Lawson was playing drums and Nathan East was playing bass. And I think that was on the back of that Both Sides album. I think it was called Both Sides, and they were touring that. And Chester Thompson, who was always his long-term guy that played drums with Phil. I saw him do the But Series tour, which was the big tent, the circus tour. So I got to see that in '88. I was at '89. I was at definitely '89. I got to see Ricky Lawson do that gig as well. So and it's they'll both shared the similarities of what the Phil's vibe of what Phil how Phil constructed his drum parts and all that sort of stuff. They really tipped their hat to it, So and let's put it this way, it's not hard to not do that because the parts are great and you got to play those grooves the way they should be played, But I do believe Phil Collins was Phil was a real sort of very meticulous guy as far as the way his band sounded and stuff like that. He handed out notes at the end of rehearsals and at the end of gigs and to keep everyone on their toes. But his whole thing was not to be difficult to work with. And from by all accounts, he wasn't. But he just wanted to give the audience that level of consistency, from show to show. I think that was his thing, So it wasn't quite a jammy band, if you know what I mean. A lot of things were set in stone, So
I know what you mean.
Yeah. And so I think there's always merit for that, and there's a discipline as a musician to do that, if that's what the gig requires, But usually when you're playing those songs, they're so drum orientated.
Yeah.
It's like, how could you not have fun? Even if I'm going to play the same thing over and over every night, it's like, I'm totally cool with that, So, it's really interesting,
So a couple, and going back to that whole sort of that era with a lot of the musicians sort of playing with each other and doing different things, and a couple of very early VHS performances that I remember seeing as a sort of an up and coming drummer. The first one was Eric Clapton's 24 Nights.
Oh yeah,
at the Royal Albert Hall. So Steve Ferroni was playing drums, Nathan East was playing bass. So he had like three bands, three different performances, and one was it was a four piece. So it was Greg Fillinganes on keyboard, Steve Ferroni on drums, Nathan East on bass, and Clapton on guitar. So that was his first sort of band, and then the second one was his blues with Jamie Odaker, the drummer, with his sort of blues band, and then at the end, Ferroni came back with East and Fillinganes, but then there was like a brass section and it was this massive thing. So
correct,
that was my first sort of seeing Steve Ferroni, like sort of studying him, and then not long after that, I got the But Seriously Live VHS tape for Christmas.
Yep.
And then
Killer.
Then I'm sort of into that. So it was like swapping the tapes out of the machine. So it was watching 24 Nights, watching that Nathan East playing bass, and then studying Lee Sklar playing bass, and then, going back to the whole, and next thing you know, Nathan East playing bass for Phil Collins. It's like, oh man, this is great. This is nuts. Yeah. This is great. It's so good.
It's fabulous. I saw Steve Ferroni play with Clapton. I saw that lineup with Greg Fillinganes and Nathan East, and
oh wow,
and they played the tennis centre here, and it was phenomenal. And the support actor was actually Tommy Emmanuel. So, and that was 91 or 92.
When did you start playing with Tommy? That Tommy was like late 90s, wasn't it?
I started, I was 96 to 97.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then I was in his band for 2 years, and then he left Australia to go and live in the UK to, I guess, pursue a different career over there, more to be closer to Europe. So, and doing more the solo thing there. So, kind of, it was being on the road with Tommy was an absolute education, man, in how to play at your peak every night, because that's what he did. And, you couldn't help but just keep up with him. And it was so great, because it was so great to do that, and plus we were younger too, man. I was 26 going on 27 sort of vibe. So I had energy to burn, and it was, it was a phenomenal time in my life, I think, looking back on it, and playing with a band of, we're all the same age too, because by that time he had a whole new band, and we're all younger cats sort of thing, and a different sound, and we were playing some of the stuff that he recorded with American musicians too, like, an album called Can't Get Enough was all done in the States. So he had, like, Tom Breckline was playing drums on tracks, and and even on the Journey album, that album, I mean, Carlos Vega played on the majority of that record, so learning. So I was very lucky to kind of having had to learn those parts, or learn the vibe, and so and playing with Tommy is just phenomenal. Anyone who's played with him will tell you that, So it's not just me.
So my mind's just gone back to what you were just saying about Phil Collins, how he would sort of come out of a rehearsal or a performance and he'd have notes for everybody. So working with, I'm not saying it was like that with Tommy. I don't know, but what sort of direction were you getting especially being sort of young cats coming into it. What kind of direction were you getting from him? Did it have to be a set way, a set part of the show, or was it sort of open for him? Well, I mean, because he needs to be able to take off when he needs to, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, look, we were just thinking back to the first band rehearsals. We obviously got given tapes of the repertoire. So I basically transcribed and learnt the stuff, wrote it all out so I could practice it at home. And then by the time we got to the first rehearsal, I'd already kind of absorbed it and learnt it. So I played it like the record. And then once we kind of got everything started sounding where it should sound, we would all take a little bit of liberty, or some risks in the music, not to overplay, but just to add something that might, sort of, trigger something in the night. I don't know. I mean, I from memory, Tommy would tell me to play certain things, a certain way, and you just got to go, yeah, of course, absolutely. You might have strayed away from the original concept, so you need to be kind of reined in a little bit, and be told, hey, I think we should do it like this, or more to the point, you should do it like this, him telling me, and you have to accommodate, and there should be no problem with that. Any musician that's faced with that, it's not done with any malice or to tell you that you're playing something badly. It's just not the right thing at the time to play. So, and he's got ears he could hear everything what was going on. He would turn around sometimes and just kind of, look at me and go, "Come on, man, let's go." And I knew the look, like, "All right, let's go." So I would, you'd react to that, and so. But as far as musical notes, there was a few, but it was all done with the greater good. In making the show sound better and things like that, But he liked to joke around on stage too. Sometimes he'd start the song a little bit differently, and we'd all look at each other and trying to figure out what he's doing, And then we just jump into it. Yeah, totally. So, so rather than me counting something in, he's already started it, and it's like, oh, okay. Gotcha. No worries.
I'll catch up.
Yeah, we'll catch up. And, but then everything falls into place, and, they were great, they were great times, man. When, we're playing, to land that gig where you're playing instrumental music, which is, like, for me, I'm into jazz and fusion and all that sort of stuff. And I love all that stuff. And, to play with someone of that ilk, that is Tommy, that he can just play the pants off anything, was a real special time, man. And the great thing is too that he's a drummer too. He plays drums, so he would often get on the drum kit to play, and I'd go out the front and listen to what my drums sounded front of house, and he would jam with the guys in the band, and. He taught me a lot, man. He really did. It was just
so just on Tommy as the drummer then. So Tommy the drummer having Gerry the drummer there. So would he sort of say, "Hey man, just let me jump on and try and play it this way" type thing? Was he that kind of?
No, he wasn't. He wasn't that sort of guy. He would never push you off the kit and go, "I want it this way." It was never that. The only thing that he showed me, which was great, was a brush thing that he wanted me to phrase it a certain way. And he goes, "Oh, I do it this way," and it made perfect sense because it did have a different sound to it. And the way he played it and the way he showed me the sticking of it, it created, it was a different flavor. And so I took that on. I went, yeah, that's great. what is it that you're playing? And he'd play it, and I'd study it, and then because I used to play on a phone book with him, like that was part of the show. We mic up a phone book. And so, it was great fun, man. Yeah, so that was like a feature where it was just me and him playing like a couple of tunes together. He plays acoustic and I just play brushes on a phone book. And so there was one thing, it was like a dun, jigga dun, jigga dun, jigga dun, jigga dun, jigga dun, jigga dun sort of thing, like a train. And I kind of had it down, but he played it for me and it sounded different. And he showed me the way he did it, and to this day, I kind of I've got that in the bag of tricks, so to speak. So
that's great.
But the thing is, he's a big Steve Gadd fan too. Okay. So if you any time during the night I went digga-da-gum, 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 he would just turn around and just give me the biggest smile because I knew that he loved it. And he's like, we would often talk about that. Even to this day, whenever he comes to town, we try and catch up for a coffee or something like that. And all we talk about is Steve Gadd. So
that's cool, man.
Yeah.
So on Steve Gadd, are you going to see James Taylor in April?
Well, look, man, that's a tough one because I've got like some commitments and shit like that. But I'm hoping to. If I can't get a ticket here in Melbourne, I'll probably try and find one interstate and, go and see the gig. So it'd be great, no doubt. He's got the A-team this time around. So,
I don't know if you've listened to the Steve Gadd Spotlight podcast that we did. So it was myself, Gordo, Britt Meister, Hamish Stewart, Darren Frugia, and my old drum teacher from New Zealand, Lance Phillip. So, so that's a real Gadd deep dive, and we found some sort of, tracks that he's played on that maybe some people didn't know about, and, not just the normal sort of stuff. So,
sure.
We're big Gadd fans here.
You're Gadd geeking out, mate.
Yeah, Gadd geeking out. That's right.
So what was some of the more obscure stuff that I probably don't know that he played on?
Well, you probably know them. One of the tracks I picked was In This Love Together.
Yep.
El Giro.
Yep.
Because of that little sort of, he does that.
The straight thing at the end.
Yeah, but then he does that sort of paradiddly thing that he does out of the break. Yep. Hamish chose, it was a Joe Cocker track.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, because he played with Joe Cocker. Yeah, that's right.
Yep. And then there was, I think Gordo, it was Foots, wasn't it? Hang on, I've got it here. What's that? So that was one of Gordo's. And then, Bob, Lance chose it was a Bob James track.
Yep.
And there was a couple others in there. Yeah. If you get a chance, go.
Great.
Listen to it.
I'll check it out.
Cool.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, we just sort of, we just sort of waffled on about how, we perceive the tracks and.
Great.
Yeah, it's just good. It's probably more about us. Those podcasts, the Spotlight podcast. We did a Jeff Beccaro one. We've done the Gadd one. We did a Jaco Pastorius one.
Great.
Yeah, but yeah. Anyway.
Well, so, the thing with Gadd, or with Mr. Steve Gadd, as I like to call him, Dr. God, Steve Gadd. He's how old is he now? He's pushing 80. His playing is. I don't know if you've seen some of that recent. There was a recent gig him and his band did in some jazz festival in Europe, and it was only about probably a couple of months ago, and it's on YouTube. It sounds incredible. Whoever mixed it live should be credited. It sounds unbelievable, and you put it through your home stereo system or something like that. And Gaddy's just playing with such ferocity in his playing. When he wants to put the pedal down, bang,
Yep.
he's there. And such
It's the whole body too, eh? The whole body into the foot. Yeah.
Well, the whole thing, it's totally invested. It's invested in the music. You can see it and you can hear it. And that's something that's never gone away with him. As we get older, that some players, it kind of lingers off, but he's just plays with such intent, and and listen to the way him and Mikey Landau play in that band too. They just don't let up. It's perfection every single note they play, and that's the thing that gets me. That these guys have been around for so long, have done everything, and you think it might just kind of fall off the back of a truck sometimes. You know what I mean? And they might just phone it in. It's not so with these guys. It's not so these guys, man. These guys play with as much sort of ferocity as a teenager, and I think that's something to really aspire to. I know I try and be like that when I'm playing. It doesn't matter what gig I'm doing. It's like it might be the last one I'm going to play. Make it a good one,
Yeah,
make it a good gig,
Yeah.
His interview he did with
Rick Beato. Yeah.
I mean,
that was great.
It was a very open Steve Gadd where he talked about a lot of stuff and nothing was off that you couldn't talk about. And he talked about his addictions and things like that, and we got to meet him a couple of times. I got to meet him in Melbourne, like 2002 or 3, I think it might have been, just for Yamaha. And it was me, Farouj, the Yamaha rep, a good friend of mine, Enzo Faila, who was and Gordo would remember Enzo as well. He was our Yamaha guy back then. And Gadd was in town with James Taylor, and he organised a coffee, and so we met him at the hotel, and we went around a corner to, of all places, a Starbucks, because that's what he drinks. Anyway, we go to a Starbucks and we order in coffee and we sit down, and we're just, he's such a lovely guy, and he started talking about drums. He was like really open to the whole thing, So we kind of were asking questions about certain sessions and certain recordings, and basically had to tell us to. He said, "Look, guys, there's a period in my life where I don't remember much about that stuff," and it was kind of like what he brought up on that interview. He was really open about that, and so. But some of my favourite albums, he probably doesn't even remember cutting them.
Yeah, that's right.
Like the Lee Ritenour Feel the Night album, 79 or something like that. Man, there's some phenomenal drumming on that. And we asked him about that record. He doesn't remember much about the making of that.
Actually, now that you say that Lee Ritenour, one of the Lee Ritenour tracks was one of Farouj's picks in that podcast that we did.
Yeah.
And Farouj actually talks about that. He mentions that story that you're talking about.
Yeah.
How you guys went for a coffee somewhere.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was just, such an iconic figure, and we're having a coffee with this guy. It's like, man, far out. So lucky, so fortunate to be in that position sometimes, as luck would have it. But, you mentioned Gordo and Hamish and like they're Sydney players, man. I don't get a chance to see many Sydney cats, and when Gordo moved to Melbourne to do the Steve Vizard show, I was out doing gigs, and he would come and hang out, and then he would invite me to the taping of a show, and I would hang out with him, and our friendship sort of started back in it would have been 94, 95, I think. Yeah, and so Gordo to me is like the next tier level player, man. He really is, and he's so knowledgeable, and he's the all rounder that I aspire to be. It's just and the fact that what we all share is a common love of music and playing, and because I've been doing these gigs with Darryl, I bump into Gordo a lot on these festival gigs, because he'd be part of that house band in which he backs 4 or 5 different artists in a day. So I get to see Gordo play like with Richard Clapton. He might do the Eurogliders. He might do Glenn Shorrock. He might do, Kate Sobrano or something like that. It's either him or Pete Drummond. Does that gig. Gets put into the super band sort of vibe. So I love seeing Gordo play and just hanging out with him, and like it's lovely, man. Hamish not so much. I know of Hamish heritage and he's playing, but I've only met him once or twice. But I'm a total fan, if you know what I mean. So someone like that, it's hard not to be.
I went to a gig last week. Jade McRae. So I went and watched her play, and I also interviewed her before the gig. And anyway, so Hamish was part of her band, and that was the first time I've seen Hamish play in sort of a soul. What's that bubble? Did you see the bubble that popped up on my screen then?
A thumb. You went like that, and a thumb came up. Do it again.
Hang on, mate.
It just saw your thumb. It went like that, and then the bubble came up.
That's fucking weird.
Oh, man. What the hell?
What the fuck was that?
I don't know.
I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah.
So Jade,
Jade's
gig,
gig,
right?
and Hamish was doing the gig. So that's the first time I'd seen Hamish play in that sort of setting. And I tell you what, he's our Sydney Gad.
Yeah,
his flow and his feel and his solid, it was a big band too. So there was two keyboard players. There was 4 backup singers. There was Jade. There was a guitarist. There was a bass player, and there was a trumpet, a saxophone, and a trombone. Right, and nice. Hamish was the boss, man. Like they just. How do I say it? He just commanded the time because there's so much going on with that, and it's quite a wide room. They're on different sides of the stage. I don't know how they could hear each other, but Hamish was sort of right in the middle of that, and he just held it down, and it blew me away. I haven't seen someone sort of sit in a pocket like that for a show that sort of diverse. Being in the same room as that was quite profound, to be honest.
Yeah. I'm sure it would have been. There was another great drummer in Sydney around. When I was kind of coming in and out of there, was Gerry Buchanan. Gerry. There's another one that's like right into the Jeff Beccaro, Gad, the LA sound. He's another one that's next level,
Gerry was on
can play piano.
He's a brilliant songwriter. He was on the Jeff Beccaro podcast that we did together.
Of course he would have been. Absolutely.
So he was,
man.
It's
great.
Yep. Well, I
Sydney
mean,
Cats.
That's Sydney Cats. Now, so we're like an hour 15 into this recording, right? So this would have to be the long. No, me neither. I've got all. But this would have to be the longest it's taken for me to ask this to do this, right? All right, Gerry, let's roll it back to how it all began.
Oh God!
Yes. So you
not again.
You're not again. No, look, I'm curious on how it sort of all started for you. I know there's some musicians in your family, some heavy musicians in your family, so I'm keen to sort of hear how it all sort of started out for you, and I believe you started on piano, right? And then
Correct.
You moved to drums. So I'm interested in how you ended up becoming a drummer and not sticking with the piano.
Well, pretty much because I was really shit at playing the piano, and I found it really, really frustrating. It was just, it's not an instrument that I, can kind of play or try to play naturally, So it was always really, really hard. It just never connected. The dots, literally the dots didn't connect with my head, and stuff like that. I've got a MIDI controller here, like a keyboard thing. That's what it is. It's a MIDI controller for other things, So I tried bass there for a while too, but that was working out pretty good. But I was still really, really young. When I learning piano, I was 5 or 6, and it just wasn't working out. And then bass was probably when I was 8 or 9. I was wanting to go outside and kick the footy around, and play cricket and football, and I was always very active sports wise, in that department. But drumming, I just asked my dad. I said, "Can I learn drums?" And he said, "Well, you've given up on 2 other instruments. What makes you think you can try? You might like." I said, "Well, that's it. I might like it." So, and I ended up loving it. I ended up loving taking lessons. I loved practicing. I didn't have a drum kit for the first probably 3 months of taking lessons. So it was all done with tables and chairs and stuff like that. And
so was that Dad going, "All right, we've spent money on these other instruments. You might not stick to it." Okay.
Correct. It was definitely that. And I don't blame him either, man, because my father was a working musician, and we weren't rolling in money and all that sort of stuff. And it was Dad did his absolute best to raise 2 boys, and a family, all that sort of stuff that goes along with that. And so yes, he was obviously apprehensive at first, but he found a great teacher for me, and I didn't look back, and so. And by that stage, my brother was already playing guitar, and so he was already quite advanced as learning his instrument. And it took me a while to try and catch up to that, so we could at least jam together, and not sound terrible, sort of thing. But there was always music in the home. That was the thing. I was exposed to so much at home at an early age. Not only whatever I was listening to on the radio, which was the music of the day. My father was into classical Latin music, so new romantic side music, piano players and things like that. But it wasn't until my brother started bringing home jazz records with guitar players on them that I "Oh, what's this? This is interesting. This is different." And I got into listening to jazz, and myself and my brother were buying Beatle records, so we were heavily into the Beatles. And then I discovered Kiss, and then I discovered Van Halen, and then I was playing along to whatever was on the radio, and that was a real, and just. And this, Steve, when you do that, you're kind of learning songs without even knowing it. You're learning songs. So I was learning that sort of repertoire without really trying. So subconsciously, I'm kind of absorbing a lot of music. But I was also absorbing a lot of the jazz stuff and listening to and learning standards, learning melodies, hearing, not knowing what the title of the songs were, just really absorbing it. And so. That all came to be an advantage much later down the track, playing in little combos and things like that, and jamming with other musicians who could play jazz standards and stuff like that, and stuff of that nature. And so I would already kind of know the song without having to try and figure it out, And but when you're playing jazz and things like that, you are playing the song. You're playing a song. You're following the melody, and you're following. There's a swing pattern you can play. You can just lock it down and let the others do all the work as a beginner. You know what I mean? Just to get the whole thing going. To feel a swing pocket. And then from there, I kind of, obviously was exposed to, some Gene Krupa and some Buddy Rich, the big band stuff. And then you start to realize, the drumming element of it, can really expand your horizon in playing these tunes. You know, developing your independence, developing your solo ideas, you know. And luckily for me, I had a drum teacher who gave me ideas to work on, you know, who was right into players like Buddy Rich and Steve Gadd and Picaro and those sort of players. So I was really lucky in that regard that my teacher was, and he exposed me to, like, you know, like I remember the pinnacle moment for me, which kind of turned my head around, was the Chick Corea album, the Electric Band, the first album with Dave Weckl. I remember him vividly writing on the back of my manuscript book, Chick Corea, Electric Band. Then he wrote in brackets, got a match. And then there was another album, that he said Steps Ahead, which I couldn't find, but I did order the Chick Corea album. And that, I remember putting the needle on that record and hearing that first track rumble and just like going, what the hell is this? This is the jazz and the rock that I've been listening to. You know, obviously that's the fusion element, right? So then I went nuts. So I was around 15 when I first heard that, and that to me maybe catapulted me into listening more into that style of music more. And I went back and listened to early Chick Corea with the Return of Forever, and obviously I discovered Mahavishnu and listened to that music, and Billy Cobham, and, you know, obviously Lenny White, and, you know, but all the while listening to what, you know, the new players were doing, like, you know, the Weckls. And then I got introduced to Vinnie, then I got introduced to Gadd, and, you know, the wonderful world of jazz fusion, you know, which now doesn't have a serious, a bad rap about it. You know, like fusion back, it was like a dirty word. You could not say you were into fusion. You couldn't say that. Yeah. Now it's like I listen to Snarky Puppy, all these bands. I go, well, that's fusion, man. Oh no, it's funk. I go, no, it's not. It's fusion. That's what it is. Let's bring that label back, because that's what it is. So it's an amalgamation of those different styles. That's what fusion represents. And that's why I think fusion is such a great word to describe something. You know, because if it's rocky, but it's got some jazz over, like everyone's kind of improvising or whatever it is and taking risks, you know, well, we're implementing another style of music into it. So we're fusing those things together. That's what it means. Yeah, you know, that's what it is. It's simple. It's a pretty simple concept, you know. So those early stages was being exposed to that. To that music and anything around me too. Anybody that showed me something new, I devoured it. I listened to it all the time. You know, I would make a cassette of it and play it, you know, religiously, and then try and play along to it too, no matter how hard or how out of depth it was. I didn't care. I just tried to play it, you know, and it probably sounded horrible, but that's the learning curve that I took, you know. And so that kind of made me a better player when I was ready to start jamming with other musicians and start playing, you know, and then getting gigs or what have you, you know. Not saying I had the perfect training ground. I mean, it differs for everybody, right? So, but I, you know, definitely taking lessons was something that I really enjoyed, and above all, practicing was something that I really enjoyed, which I still enjoy today. I'm still working on things, trying to be a better player and work on different aspects of my technique or my ideas or whatever, you know. They may not come out of my playing straight away because of the gigs that I'm doing now. You know, don't expect me to play some of this stuff on a Darryl gig because it's just not musically appropriate, you know.
Like we did when we were 15 and 16, whatever we learnt that day was coming out at the cabaret gig on Friday
Absolutely.
night, right?
You gave it a shot, man. You just did it, right? And then if you're lucky, you actually played it right, you know,
if you're lucky, you got asked to come back next week.
That's exactly right, you know. But those doing those sort of gigs, that's the, you know, it was the perfect opportunity to trial that stuff, you know, because there were, you know, you're not being filmed, not like today where everyone's got a single phone. You go and do a filling gig, and then someone's there right there with a phone videoing. It's like, well, you know, you're kind of sight reading this stuff. And it's like, man, you know, this is not what I signed up for. You know, I can't stretch out for starters because I'm not I don't know the music that well. I'm still reading it. Maybe come back in 3 weeks' time when I've absorbed the music and I haven't got my heads buried in the charts. Then you're more than welcome to film it. But and back in those days, I didn't have to worry about that stuff. So we just took risks. Just took risks. And the worst you got told was, "Hey man, don't do that again." And you learn really quickly not to do it again. Perfect. Easy,
Can I just jump back to, you came home and you said that you told your dad you wanted to learn drums, right? So where did the idea of drums come from? Did you see someone? Did you hear someone?
No.
Or were you running out of instruments, right?
Probably running out of instruments, yeah. I think it was something, it was just, I just wanted to be part of it. I wanted to be part of it, and so I thought drums might be something that I could do. Might be something. I still haven't figured that out yet, Steve. You know what I mean?
Oh, these things take time, Gerry.
Absolutely, man. And so it was something that I thought, because I loved music, and I thought I just wanted to be part of it, part of something, try and play something. But yeah, once the drumming thing, was it anyone in particular? Probably Ringo, listening to all those Beatles records and things like that, listening to that music. But I think it was music that drove me to play drums. It was music that drove me to play, not drummers wanting to play drums. You know what I mean? There's a big difference there. So it was something that I wanted to play music. I need to play music with somebody. So, I wanted to play music with my brother and maybe dad. So maybe I can learn the drums. So that's pretty much the answer to that question.
I think, it's similar for me too. But for me, it was like my brother was the first drummer in my family. So my younger brother. So he was getting, So we were part of this a country music club in our local region in Masterton, New Zealand. So once a month on a Sunday, my dad would go down there and he would sit in with the band, he would sing, and then we would sort of go along. And then one day my younger brother, he came home from school and he'd seen the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra percussionist had come to his school to do a clinic, like a school sort of performance thing. And he came home, my brother came home and goes, "Dad, I want to learn drums." Right? So because dad was part of this country club, and he told the president of the country club that, my brother's keen to play. And Tom Brooks was the president of the club. He goes, "Look, I've got a set of drums in the back of my van." He goes, you can take those drums and your son can learn how to play them on the proviso that once he's good enough, he comes and plays drums at the club. On the last Sunday of every month, he comes and sits in with the band. Cool. So we get this drum kit at home, and then my brother started getting these private lessons in the back shed, and I would sit out there and I would watch him play, right? Yeah. I would watch him get his lessons. My brother would do his lesson. My brother would leave. I'd jump on the drums. I'd do the lesson, right?
Fantastic.
And then that brother rivalry came in, and he went, "You're getting better than me. Fuck this. I don't want to play drums anymore." So then I stuck to it, it was never. It was, isn't it? Yeah, and it was never. I of course, I knew of drummers, and I'd seen drummers in my dad's band and all that sort of stuff. But it was just, for me, it was like getting on the drums and going. Because actually, someone had told me if you can pat your head and rub your stomach, and you can do it both hands, right? You can play drums, right? So I said to myself, well, maybe I'll be a drummer.
That's great.
Yeah, man. So
that's fantastic.
It was the music and the feeling. It wasn't a drummer. So
there you go. Isn't it? Yeah. So we're very similar in that regard. And again, everyone's different with how they start. So it's funny because sometimes things come in full circle. I've got a bass guitar here. It's not in my studio. My son's got it at the minute. I've got a bass. I can play a little bit. I got a guitar. I can play a little bit. I can come up with some things and, work on whatever, and it's more, for me, it's like just a self-indulgent, having fun thing. I'm not going to I can't go and do a gig. I'm not that qualified to do that, but it's still, learning an instrument is like anything. It's a gateway to whatever you want to do, whether it's something that's for fun, and then eventually it might become a profession. I didn't want it to become, I didn't know it was going to become what it was. I had no idea, like I said earlier, I really love sport. I love footy. In high school, primary school, high school, I played football and cricket, loved it. But then it came to a point where you got to make a decision where, you value your hands and your feet, not getting broken hands and stuff like that by playing football or getting hit by a cricket ball,
Yep.
And I wasn't a very tall player. I was like a rover. So when I was probably 14, 15, there was kids that were like double the size of me on the field. It's like, man, this is not for me anymore.
It's not going to work.
Not going to work out. Not going to work out. So since then, I would pick less non-contact sports like tennis, squash, or golf.
Yeah.
And I got heavily into those.
You obviously haven't been whacked in the head with a squash racket then.
No, I haven't. But I've run into the the
glass wall.
Heaps of times. I used to do that. Used to bang and get knocked out and whatever.
Yeah.
Those were the days,
Yeah, I don't know if you. I just took a photo of my wall because you can't see it, but you were talking about guitars. And
there you go. Beautiful.
Yeah,
man.
So I've got
beautiful.
Yeah, I've got a
couple fenders up there.
A fretless and a jazz fretless jazz fretted bass, and then I got a Strat. So yeah, man, we're similar in so many ways, aren't we? Like musically and instrument wise.
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's it's becoming common. Like someone like Pete Drummond. Pete. He's so multi-talented, man. He plays keys, plays guitar really great.
Bass guitar,
and
plays lead guitar.
It plays lead guitar,
well.
And he sings great. So, that sort of stuff doesn't surprise me, with someone like that, like having these, I'm not going to say hidden talents because they're not hidden. They're out there, and I think it's inspiring actually, I think it's inspiring to see that a drummer that can play other instruments. And also, I get excited when I see a bass player or a guitar player get on a drum kit and play a groove. I love that, And I think I got into more playing bass because I wanted to understand more about the other half of the rhythm section. I want to understand more about what a bass player thinks about when a drummer's playing, and also what a bass player thinks about as far as note lengths, the length of a note. Whether it's, it's got to be a quarter note or it's got to be a half note or a whole note. The length of the note is so important to the way a groove comes together. When drummers play a pattern, that's all it is at the minute. It's just a pattern. It's not a groove yet. It's only a groove when certain elements are in place, right? Now, from a drummer's point of view, it's time. Right? How good is your time? How even is your time? How even is the space between your notes? Right? So now we're talking about space, note length, so to speak. Right? So then it becomes a groove. But what can also sort of affect that is what the bass player does as far as note lengths. Are they rushing? Is it not finishing prop, that sort of thing. You listen back to a playback and you're going, and we're all kind of scratching our heads going, what's not quite right here, And it may well be any one of those factors. And I can bet you bottom dollar it would be, because even if you're working with a click or without a click, those elements are still present, And then it becomes what we commonly refer to as the feel. It gives us a feel. Right? Now you listen to those Steely Dan albums, most the earlier stuff wasn't done to a click track. It floats around a little bit, but the rhythm sections were done together, as far as what I'm led to believe anyway. So they might be tracking one song, just one song in a 3-hour call, So they got time for it to settle in,
30 takes, though.
Absolutely, but that's what it takes. That's the thing.
That's what it takes.
That's what it takes to get it sounding right. And and when someone says to me, oh, we're gonna run it down once or twice and then record it, and I go, well, okay, well, can we at least kind of woodshed the parts a little bit, like just refine it, not just play the first thing that comes to our mind, which may well be what is required for the track, but there may be something else we can do which might enhance it a little bit, So, and when you're doing that, you're still trying to find the pocket. And that's where the click track comes in handy, because that way we can kind of go, well, let's establish what the tempo is that you want the song at. Then we don't have to worry about finding where the tempo is. We've got it there. We've got the click track, blasting through our headphones. So now all we're worried about is note placement and what notes are we going to play and how we're going to play them. So when you're not worried about the time element so much, the time is being taken care of by the click track. We follow the click track. Whether we follow it ahead or behind, I try and be as bang on as possible. I try and, smother it, and sometimes that doesn't work out because it can make it sound, maybe too stiff. So you lay back on it a little bit. And then when you listen to it without the click track, the music it's either going to suck or it's going to breathe, and so there's so many variables in what we do, which dictates what a groove is and how it feels and how it sounds, So when we listen back to those classic recordings, some of them might be a first, second take. They got lucky, but some of them they might have actually really honed in their parts. So that way they're not just trying to read the part anymore. They're now, it's absorbed in their hands and they're not thinking about how to play it. They know how to play it. You know what I mean? And that sort of thing. I try and take that approach with everything too, Steve. I really do. It's like if I'm doing something here in my studio, I could take all day on the track. It doesn't, it's, if I don't feel right, I'll take a break, go have a coffee, come back and do another take and, do multiple takes. If I listen back, that's different. That's a different thing when you're going into a studio which doesn't really happen that much these days anymore, man. Everybody's setting up live. I did one probably about 2 months ago and it was the best feeling. The whole band was there and we got so much done being all together because now we're bouncing ideas off each other. Hey, let's try, when we hit the bridge, let's try this bit. Oh yeah, great. That'll sound great. Whereas if we were recording remotely, that would take 2 days. Oh,
send the email.
Yeah. And then it's back and forth, which is just another way of recording. But when it's all done in the room together, everyone talks about capturing, the magic. Jeff Piccaro talked about that a lot, like capturing the magic in the studio. That's what he was referring to. Like, when everybody's on the same page, it's all gelled, everybody knows kind of what they're doing, and then they go for it, That's the thing,
Yeah. Go. How I sort of made that little comment about the 30 takes thing, Yeah. I've thought about this a few times, and I think a big part of it too, well, this is just me anyway, but 30 takes is a lot of takes, right?
Totally. Absolutely.
Yeah, right. So that's fucking cocaine doing that. these guys are buzzing. So right,
yeah,
they've got to keep the buzz up. So let's just go another. Yeah, we had it at track 2, but
that's correct.
I can't head home right now. I'm too wasted. So let's do another.
That's right. Yeah, another 40. When I might kind of like say that when you're doing 30 takes, you're actually not kind of doing, unless they were all being recorded, yeah. But I'm talking about like, you rehearse the tune maybe 3 or 4 times and that process. And then you might do 1 or 2 takes and then I can bet you bottom dollar it'll be the second take where everybody kind of gravitates towards, and possibly the third take. But anything after that, it's all bullshit.
Yeah, that's right.
It's all bullshit.
It's the old Steely Dan bullshit. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you when I'm doing stuff here, like if I do like maybe 5 passes in a row, and then listen back to take 2, then listen back to take 3, take 4. By the time I get to take 5, the vibe's kind of gone. My energy levels maybe just sapped a little bit. So
your ears are fatigued. Yep.
Absolutely. So you start hearing things that aren't even there. And that becomes really, really frustrating too. So yeah, like there were obviously producers that back in the day they would do those amount of takes. Phil Spector was known for doing that sort of bullshit, and obviously Steely Dan as well. But it gets to a point where how much better can you play it? And I don't think you can play it better than after the second or third take, pretty much.
Yeah. No, I agree. You sent me some stuff a couple of days ago to listen to, right? So one of those albums was, and one of those acts, I think, bands is and correct me if I'm saying the name wrong. Is it Luoda?
Perfect.
Did I say that right? Nailed it again.
Man.
Yep.
Beautiful, man. That's so good.
I should have been a linguistist. I didn't even say that right, but yeah, you know what I mean.
I know what you mean, man. Yes, Luoda. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I've listened to that album that you sent me, or EP, or what? Well, it's about five or six tracks. I've listened to that a number of times in the last couple of days, and man, I love it. That's great. And
great.
Can you tell me how that sort of project came about? And
sure.
Let me roll back a little bit. A couple of weeks ago, I went and saw Wicked, the musical, right?
Yep.
And the first musical I'd been to in a long time. And I was sitting, sort of on the rail, looking down at the pit, and a mate of mine was playing drums, and
Mr. Glenn Wilson.
Mr. Glenn Wilson, absolutely. So,
dear friend of mine, man, it's great.
And I was sort of, I loved the music, and then there's a certain type of vocal that a theatre production has. It's not your standard sort of commercial type voice, right? You know what I'm saying, eh?
Oh, I totally know what you're talking about.
When I started listening to this Luoda album, it's kind of like I was listening to musicians that had been in a pit that all of a sudden are out of the pit and they're going to do their own music, and I fucking loved it, man. It's really, really great.
Great.
So now that I've given you my perspective on that, you tell me how that band actually came about.
It came about because the guitar player on that record, he actually wrote all the tunes. A guy named Glenn Cannon, he wrote all the tunes and the melodies, but he got the singers to write lyrics. He basically handed over the tunes to them and said, "I need you to. Would you like to write some lyrics to these to my melodies?" And I'd known Glenn for decades, and he approached me about this project, whether I'd be interested in playing, just doing a gig. And I said, I said, well, let me listen to what you guys are doing, And he gave me a couple of tunes, and I freaking loved it, man. The tunes are great, And by this stage, he had no drums on it. It was just basically vocals and guitars, right? Like recorded on an iPhone, one of their rehearsals, And so that it came from that, and then the process of the making of the album. So we did a gig. It's a 10-piece band. So we did a gig, and the gig. I recorded it. It was recorded, and then we're listening back to it. I'm going, man, we really need to make an album of a proper recording of these tunes. And so as we were planning it, and then COVID took over, and so none of us could leave the house. So I already made the decision to kind of track the drums from home, do all the drums from home, get all the beds down, and then we could hand files out to the bass player, the keyboard player. You play on that. You do it from the luxury of your home, So I did 5 tracks. It's actually a 10-track CD. So I remember doing 5 tracks initially, and then the bass player and the keyboard player didn't have home recording setups, so we had to wait till the restrictions were
so you got a bit
lifted.
of a break.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I got the bass player to come around, Ashley Smith to come and play bass, and I got Darren Archer to come play keyboards, piano. So we tracked that. So now we've got Glenn to play guitar on it. He did it in my studio here. So now the rhythm section's starting to form, right? So it was ready enough now, the first 5 tracks, to hand them over to the singers to start. And they did everything remotely as well because they all had setups. Luckily, they all knew their parts and everything, So that's how that album came about. And then the next 5 songs we did pretty much in the same way. And so when it came to mixing the record, because I'd recorded everything here, the sort of the stems that I was setting out to the singers and to Glenn to listen to, Glenn turns to me and goes, "Man, why don't you have a go at mixing the whole thing?" I wasn't planning on. I wasn't sort of pitching for the idea. I was more than happy to hand the files over and let someone else take care of it because it was a pretty big undertaking. 4 vocalists singing harmonies, with a 6-piece band. It's like, oh man, that's a lot of work, And it was heaps of work. The amount of endless nights I had mixing but I took my time with it too, Stevie. It was a labour of love, So once I thought when the mixes were kind of good enough to hand out to a couple of the people, in the band, maybe one of the singers or 2 of the singers and maybe the bass player, not to everyone because you're going to get 10 opinions of what it's, and then it becomes a bit of a nightmare, But when I thought I was kind of ready to kind of produce something to them and say, well, have a listen, I'm open to suggestions. And I really was, because some of the stuff that came back was stuff that I'd totally missed, And so I'm really proud of that recording, the fact that we all played on it, the time we spent to make it, the way it sounds, I'm happy with the overall package. It's great, and the songs are great, man. The vocalists are just incredible in this recording, man. It really is. And it's a joy to listen back to that recording. It really is. With certain recordings where you play on, you kind of think, oh, geez, I don't know. This one, man, I can listen to every single note that anybody played on this thing and just love it.
Yep.
So
there's one song. I can't remember exactly what it is because I'm only a couple of days into listening to it. But there's one song, and you pop in this little sort of double kick, sort of biddle type thing. Do you know? Yep. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Quite possibly, yeah.
I was driving home from work today. I was listening to the album again, and
do you remember which song it was?
It might be. Is it Running Out of Time? Might be the last or the...
Oh,
yeah. Towards the end of it. Okay, let me just try... It's towards the end. Is it the song? Oh, anyway,
yeah.
And I can't hear it properly at the moment because I've got my headphones on. It's through my phone, but
there's moments in that, like Yeah. There's a couple of little things I snuck in there. I mean, only because I could.
Only because there was going to be drummers listening to it, right?
Maybe, but I had the luxury of for that track, for instance, the sound of that snare drum is my 14-inch DW 14x4 copper snare, so it's a piccolo with a splash cymbal on top, but not hitting the splash. So hitting this to the side. So that's the sound of that one. And on other tracks, it's like I've got bloody copious amounts of gaffer to kind of make it a bit fatter and what have you. It's just so that's the luxury I had in creating parts for that record. It's a gig that we can really sort of wear our hearts on our sleeve and play. And and it's slowly getting a following. We've only done like, probably 6 or 7 gigs since, 2019, I think was the first gig we did, and then 2020 hit us, and then we're out of action. But we're slowly getting at our gigs, there's a good crowd that's rocking up. A good appreciative crowd that when they may only have heard the album on Spotify, but then when they come and see us live, it's like, shit, they're doing the same thing live. It's like these harmonies are live, which is non-existent. I don't know of any other band that's doing that like that. A lot of stuff's programmed and on tracks, and I know I've been part of bands that do that, and shows, stage shows. There's heaps of stuff on track, but not dissing it. But I mean, if that's what you need to do to get it over the line, absolutely, But it's kind of organic, if you know what I mean. It's kind of an organic thing, which is, I might run a loop for one of the songs, because it's now part of the song now. It wasn't initially, but there's a loops on there which I found. I went, oh, this might be really cool. Now it's actually, I've got to have it live. We've got to play it live like that, because if someone listens to the album, go, oh, the live version wasn't that great. I don't want them to walk away with that sort of feeling, So, but it's like with Darryl's gig, if we don't play those iconic loops like One Summer, if that loop's not there, forget it. The song becomes a little bit, it's been lessened, it's a lesser of a song now. And some other songs that he's got the loops, the intro to Horses, that's on track for the first bit, because it's kind of iconic, and what was the other one? Oh, As the Days Go By, the loop on that, that's, you kind of, they were doing that song without the loop for a while, and for some reason it kind of got reintroduced. And man, I love playing that song. I mean, I love playing all of his songs, but that loop is so freaking cool to play to. Cha cha, chika, doom doom, chika, chikum, chika, doom, chika, chika. It's that 80s drum machine, man. Like, it's killer,
That's cool, man.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier about sort of, you having played gigs, filling the sort of shoes of, of other drummers and that kind of thing. So that makes me think about Richard Marx, because you played with Richard Marx, and Richard Marx has played with some of those top sort of cats. So I'm man. Yeah, man. So I'm interested on, in your approach to that, because you've done a couple of tours with them, right?
Yeah, I did one in 2016 and one in 2018, and so yeah. Look, sorry, Steve, go.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, so, obviously he's doing his, the hit song. So I'm also curious to see how much those songs have evolved, for him, to keep it interesting for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean? That's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question, because the versions that we did, some of them were quite different to the original stuff that ended up on the album. And so, like, on those recordings, he had guys like, obviously, Jeff Beccaro was prominent on a lot of that stuff. Terry Bozio's on some tracks on the Rush Hour album. Who else is on that? I think bloody Tommy Lee gets a Guernsey on one of the big rock songs on that album. Like some of the deeper cuts, Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.
But all the early stuff was Jeff, and so those. So when I got the gig, I'm thinking, great. I'm gonna play those versions.
Okay. Well, just stop for a sec. How did you get that gig? How did the gig come about? And then we'll talk about
that gig came about through the recommendation from Brett Garsett, actually. It came through Brett because Richard knew Farnham's management or something like that, obviously, and then they got in contact with Brett, and the band was going to be something with Brett was going to be part of, but Brett couldn't do it because of his commitments with Farnham. And so he handballed it over to myself, and Phil Terzio to put something together, because Craig Newman was probably going to play bass as well, but his commitments to Farnham were, priority. And so that's how that gig came about. So and I was playing a lot with Brett anyway, and doing his fusiony stuff, and played on his record, and we had a band called Damage together, and so he thought we'd be more than able to kind of handle that music, and stuff like that. So when we got the stuff to listen to, these live versions, they were really, really different to what the original versions were, So basically learnt those live cuts. But I also went back and listened to the original versions too. Maybe there's something there I can kind of grab and drag into the, and maybe surprise him a little bit, And look, we only had one rehearsal with the guy, and that first band, we had Jack Jones playing guitar in the band and Peter Molliker on bass, and Richard walked into that rehearsal, and mind you, we rehearsed the day before he got there to run through the stuff, and so the next day Richard rocks up and he basically walks into a band that already knows his material, and we ran through pretty much everything once. He was stoked. And the next night was what was our first gig? I think in Perth or something like that, the Astor, and it was fine, But yeah, learning that stuff, it had strayed a little bit, but not too much. Something like Endless Summer Night. Is it Endless Summer Night? The pattern was the same. I remember that, and the verses. That was all pretty much the same. Obviously Right Here Waiting for You was, there was a different build-up section to that. His live, the way he would do it, got really rocky at the end. There's some really nice sort of arrangements that he'd done to his songs. But he was great, man. He was great fun to play with.
Yeah, the fact that, you guys had sort of learnt the material and, kind of know each other. Yeah. He would have walked in there, he would have heard you guys, and then he probably would have felt that it wasn't going to be too much of a hazard.
Hey, I love you. Hey. I give up. You're in charge now, man. That's it. Hands up in the air. I'm going to do a mic drop.
Hey.
That's fantastic. Although I will tell you, I'll tell you a real funny story, right? With that, it's great. I love it. It's great. How do I come back from that joke? But so we'd rehearsed the day before, and then during that rehearsal day, his management and road tour manager came and introduced himself to us, right? And so he's come in, and we're playing for him. We're just running for some stuff, and he's looking around going, "Oh, man, you guys have got it covered. This is great. Richard's going to love this, So he goes away. So the next day, we know Richard's going to rock up to the rehearsal. So we're playing one of his new original songs, like one of his newer stuff that not many people would know, and we didn't know it, but we were rehearsing it anyway. So we're playing the song, and then the doors open. Richard comes in and starts singing exactly the right spot of the song, like it's the second chorus. Like, how did he know it was the second chorus? Like with the extra bits on it. So, and he nails it. He finishes the song, like perfectly, right, with us. And then he comes around and introduces ourselves. And then anyway, it wasn't until like a couple of days later that his tour manager came up to us and said, Richard's really loves the fact that you guys have learned all the stuff, and the rehearsal was really smooth, and and he goes, well, when we rocked up to the room, and we could hear he could hear that one of his songs was being played. Richard turns to, his name is Sam, and says, "Hey man, they must be learning the new song." And Sam goes, No, they're playing it right now. That's these guys doing it now. It's not the CD. This is them. And that's when Richard knew, was like, okay, these guys might be a bit pretty serious, But that's how I knew when he walked in and knew exactly where it was to sing. He'd be listening to the beginning of the song out the front of the room. So I thought it was testimony to the band that everybody learned it so well, and made him feel really comfortable that Actually, our first gig wasn't Perth. It was actually Crown Casino. That's right. We did 2 nights at Crown, and they were both smoking gigs. They're really, really great gigs, and basically a great tour. That's what it was. It was just great fun. Great sound. Yeah. He had his tour manager was his sound guy too, so it was guaranteed it was going to be fantastic out the front, and it was. The reports that I got back was always great. And then the subsequent tour, two years later, was without Phil, because by that time they put a lot of stuff on track, a lot of keyboard things, and so it was just myself, Peter Mollica on bass, and a guy named Kevin Mark from Nashville, Tennessee, who'd been with Richard during the heyday in the 80s and 90s. So he was great. He was great fun. Beautiful guy to hang out with, and but yeah, so that's how that came about, and that process. It's no different to any other artist or any other gig that I would play with, man.
Yeah,
no different.
Yeah,
no different.
I just had to bring it up because of that sort of the history of the drummers that we kind of grew up to.
Yeah. It's no different to to any other gig. If you're going to learn a repertoire for a top 40 gig, you learn it. You don't go in there and not know the stuff. That's that. And I see a lot of drummers that I hear reports back. Oh, I didn't learn. Well, why? What's the reasoning behind that? What, you think you're going to you're going to guess how the songs end, or And if you didn't do your homework, and then expect to sort of make waves in the industry or amongst other players, because it's not other drummers that book you. It's bass players, guitar players, singers. So they're the people you want to impress, not other drummers. Simple, right?
Yeah. Yep.
It's not us.
Time and place, man. Time and place.
Exactly. So you put all the effort in, and when you get that opportunity and you're ready, it's a no-brainer. Things are going to start to happen for for you or for whoever. So. It's not an Instagram post. It's not a YouTube thing. It's actually playing in the same room as somebody where they can realize they can figure out whether you can play or not for more than 30 seconds. Can you play a song? Can you play a whole set of music? Can you play for an hour and a half? And back, Stevie, when we used to do club dates, I still do them sometimes, not much these days, but we have to do like 3 1-hour sets sometimes, man. You finish 2 o'clock in the morning, and that takes.
It was usually 4 in my dad's band.
There you go. I mean, so you had to kind of work on your playing, work on your endurance, and know songs, and be adaptable. It's a different scene these days, man. I don't think those sort of gigs exist really anymore. So. But it builds character. That's what I'm trying to say. It builds character that, if you learn the stuff, someone's going to hear you play, bang, someone's going to recommend you for another gig, or their drummer can't make it. Hey, can you do it? What have you. It's always word of mouth, man. Still word of mouth in most cases,
No. So, mate, what have you got coming up in the next... Well, what's 2024 looking like? Have you got any sort of theatre gigs sort of locked in for a part of the year, or that's going to sort of black out the calendar for a bit?
No. Well, I know I'm busy up until mid-March touring with Darryl, but then between March and I think July or August, I think he's planning on coming back. I've got some gigs with Dave Hull, a great blues guitar player from WA. Dave's been around for as long as I can remember, and it's always been one guy that I've always wanted to play with, and I'm getting the opportunity to do some gigs with him here in Melbourne.
So how did that come about?
Oh, that came about because he was doing a gig with Jeff Atchison. And I can remember another great guitar player from the Bondi Cigars. there's a Sydney band, the guitar player whose name escapes me on. I'm terrible when it comes to that. But anyway, the backing band they did some gigs around Australia, I think it was, and there was Roger. Roger was like the MD sort of vibe, or pieced it together, and it was a gig that I couldn't do. Anyway, so Dave wanted to do some solo gigs, but with a band, and Roger rang me up and said, "Oh, look, Dave wants to put something together. Would you be available?" And as luck would have it, it's the week after I finished with Darryl, so it's kind of like the timing's great. So that came through that. And Roger McLaughlin's like an old mate of mine, who actually just recently turned 70. Bless him, man. He's one of Australia's iconic bass players, and so and I've known Roger since I was about 23 years old, 22, 23. So that's a good 30 years, actually, yeah, come to think of it. So that's how that gig came about, and so we're going to do some gigs in and around Melbourne and regional Victoria. And then what else have I got coming out? No theatre work at the moment. This time last year, I was ready, like during the winter times, I did do like a 7-week stint in Melbourne of a musical called Midnight, the musical Cinderella story. It was something that was written by John Foreman. And so that was great. That was great to kind of be in the pit, 8 shows a week. I don't have to slip my gear anywhere, and I could basically hibernate for the next 7 weeks. It was great. And the band and the band was great too. Like the musicians in the band were fabulous, and it was a great hang. And so I don't know what's going to happen this time around, whether everything might come up, but I'm not going to try and fish for it, mate. I might take the time off and
No, good stuff. Well, Gerry, man, I've really enjoyed tonight. I mean, I could literally sit, well, I actually wish I was sitting in a room with you, actually, and we could waffle on for hours. I think we've got
man.
We've got
Absolutely.
lots of stuff to talk about, and maybe this leaves it open for a part 2, I think, at some stage.
Mate, so, I'm here whenever you need me, brother. I'm here, man. Yeah, it's all good. And thank you for asking me to be part of your podcast.
Pleasure, man.
Fabulous thing that you're doing, and it's keep up the great work, man. It really is.
Thank you.
Fabulous. So I appreciate that immensely for being on your podcast. And I hope I haven't bored everyone, man. You know what I mean?
No, not at all. No, and what I always say is, like, people come to listen to the guest. If they're going to get bored, they're probably going to get bored of my waffle.
Nah, your waffle is beautiful, man. Beautiful waffle.
Thank you, man. All right, man. Look after yourself, Gerry. Take it easy.
Yeah,
brother.
You too, mate.
All right. Cheers, man.
Ciao. Bye-bye.
Yo, it's Stevie here. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you dig the Gig Life podcast, please subscribe, share, leave a review. Please follow us on Instagram and TikTok. You can send me a message if you have an idea for a guest, or if you just want to say hello. This podcast is free, costs you nothing. But if you find the value in the Gig Life podcast, you can leave a tip or a donation. Links are in the show notes on your app. That's it for me for now. Catch you next time, guys. Cheers.